Ladies and gentlemen, yesterday evening, the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, which is, by the way, the official national organization of the entire Democrat Party, just made one of the single biggest political mistakes of all time. And I'll tell you what, as things currently seem, it looks like the Democrats are going to have to cut out a pretty big defamation check to President Trump. Now, for those of you that haven't been keeping up with all of the incompetent rhetoric coming from the far left, and I don't know why you would, because there's always incompetent rhetoric coming from the far left, they've just selectively released a batch of Jeffrey Epstein emails that they got their hands on. And of course, they've done this in a desperate attempt to try to destroy President Trump's credibility. The problem for them, however, is that their entire plan has totally backfired. And by the way, when I say backfired, I mean in more ways than one. You see, the first thing they did was selectively release an email exchange from 2017 in which Jeffrey Epstein said that President Trump had, quote, not one decent cell in his entire body, and that President Trump was, quote, dangerous. And of course, in response to this specific email leak, every single member of the far left has been screaming from the rooftops, see, we told you that President Trump was evil. Even Jeffrey Epstein thought he was evil. All of them seemingly totally oblivious to the fact that being hated by Jeffrey Epstein is actually a good thing. In fact, if you're hated by Jeffrey Epstein, someone who is actually evil, you're probably doing all right. But of course, this isn't actually even shocking rhetoric coming from the far left. Either they're just too stupid to realize what they're really saying here, or they're just openly admitting that they're totally comfortable having morality and basic ethics dictated to them by an evil freak like Jeffrey Epstein. Either way, not exactly a good look. But now, folks, like I said earlier, this entire situation actually gets even worse for the Democrats because yesterday evening, they made an absolutely fatal mistake. You see, in their haste to take down President Trump, the Democrats actually misinterpreted one of the Jeffrey Epstein emails, thinking that it said that President Trump celebrated Thanksgiving with Jeffrey Epstein in 2017, when in fact, that's actually not what the email said whatsoever. And even worse, unfortunately for the Democrats, at this point Trump was already the president, meaning that his schedule is completely publicly documented. It's all public record. And as it would turn out, on Thanksgiving of 2017, President Trump was actually volunteering with the Coast Guard all evening. But now, folks, this is where the story gets absolutely insane. Take a look. Very quickly, people started calling out the DNC for publishing this obviously fake story. They were caught lying to the public red-handed. And so what did they do? Well, I kid you not, they panicked and deleted the post, hoping that no one would notice. But well, unfortunately for the Democrats, all of us American patriots had already noticed. And so real quick, as a little bit of a reminder here, just in the last 12 months alone, President Trump has settled a $15 million lawsuit with ABC News, a $16 million lawsuit with CBS News, and a whopping $24.5 million lawsuit with YouTube, all because each of these organizations were caught lying about President Trump. So yeah, right now, if you're in charge of running the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, I'd go ahead and get ready to break out the checkbook. But now, folks, what if I were to tell you that the Democrats actually manipulated these emails in yet another way in a desperate attempt to make President Trump look bad? Well, guess what? They did. You see, when the Democrats selectively released these emails, they strategically redacted one of the names of Jeffrey Epstein's victims, hoping that it would make Trump look worse. And the reason why is because the victim's name who they redacted is actually Virginia Giuffre, who, prior to passing away, said time and time again that President Trump never did anything wrong. And so, ladies and gentlemen, on that note, take a look at this.
This is an email from April 2nd, 2011. Republicans are saying that that victim is Virginia Giuffre. As you know, she died by suicide. She's been very outspoken victim of Jeffrey Epstein. Here's the email right here on your screen. She wrote a book, as you know, and she did not accuse him of any wrongdoing. What do you make of that? And can you confirm that?
Yeah, I don't know. Obviously, it's redacted who the victim is, so I won't necessarily take the Republicans' word on who it is that's redacted. And I don't know why they would necessarily redact someone's name who is deceased at this point.
The Democrats did that, though. The Democrats redacted.
No. I understand,
okay,
but I'm just saying, like, our biggest concern is to actually make sure that we are protecting victims. And obviously, she wrote a book. She told her truth.
And so, folks, there you have it. The truth is, the Democrats have been caught yet again, red-handed, and so right now, they're absolutely melting down. And also, as a real quick reminder here, speaking of Jeffrey Epstein's victims, not a single one of them has ever accused President Trump of any wrongdoing. In fact, several of them have actually publicly defended President Trump, just like Virginia Giuffre. But now, folks, as it relates to all of this, I've also got some very important information that I want you all to take a look at. But first, I do want to say real fast that if you folks enjoy the daily news updates, please consider subscribing to the channel because it really does help a lot. But okay, take a look at this. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce all of you to a man named Michael Wolff, who's a political journalist that actually conducted over 100 hours of recorded interviews with Jeffrey Epstein between 2014 and 2017. You see, Michael Wolff actually recently had something very interesting to say about Jeffrey Epstein's relationship, if you can even call it that, with President Trump. Take a look.
Epstein believed that Donald Trump went to the Palm Beach police and said, Jeffrey Epstein has young girls at his house, thereby beginning the legal process which would ultimately bring Jeffrey Epstein down.
So, folks, do you understand what that really means? Jeffrey Epstein himself personally believed that in 2004 it was Donald Trump who first reported him to the police, which ultimately led to his arrest in 2006 and his criminal conviction in 2008. Have you heard that on the mainstream media? Yeah, I didn't think so. But you know what? We've actually got yet another key figure who further backs up President Trump's innocence, and this one's going to absolutely blow your mind. Ladies and gentlemen, this is attorney Bradley Edwards, who back in 2008 represented over 70 of Jeffrey Epstein's victims. So you know what? Now take a listen to what attorney Bradley Edwards had to say about President Trump's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Let it play.
The only thing that I can say about President Trump is that he is the only person who, in 2009, when I served a lot of subpoenas on a lot of people, or at least gave notice to some pretty connected people that I wanted to talk to them, he is the only person who picked up the phone and said, "Let's just talk. I'll give you as much time as you want. I'll tell you what you need to know," and was very helpful in the information that he gave, and gave no indication whatsoever that he was involved in anything untoward whatsoever, but had good information that checked out and that helped us, and that we didn't have to take a deposition of him.
That was in 2009?
That was in 2009. So,
do you know if there's any truth to James Patterson's claims that Trump kicked Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago?
I've definitely heard that.
And so, folks, there you have it. Have you heard that on the mainstream media? Once again, yeah, I don't think so. As it would turn out, Donald Trump not only tipped off the police about Jeffrey Epstein's criminal behavior in 2004, he banned him from all of his properties like Mar-a-Lago in 2005, and then in 2009, Trump worked as a confidential informant on behalf of Jeffrey Epstein's victims. Folks, at this point, we not only have an absolutely overwhelming amount of evidence proving not only that President Trump wasn't criminally involved with Jeffrey Epstein, but also, in fact, that he actually worked with law enforcement to help shut down Jeffrey Epstein's entire criminal enterprise. And so I'll tell you what, while the Democrats are busy attempting to politicize the entire Epstein situation, lying about all of the details every step of the way, in an effort to defame President Trump, we all know what the reality is. The Democrats are only pretending to care about this entire situation in an effort to destroy President Trump. Just like everything else they do, they've got absolutely no substance. Everything they do is purely performative. It's all just a bunch of ridiculous virtue signaling, but unfortunately for them, all of us see right through their entire agenda. And the truth is, all these email leaks really expose is this. Epstein hated Trump. Epstein didn't trust Trump. They weren't friends at all whatsoever. And that the Democrats actually tried to manipulate the entire narrative to lie to the public and to destroy President Trump's credibility. So hey, like I said earlier, here's my message to the DNC, to the Democratic National Committee. Get ready to break out that checkbook because we are done tolerating all of the lies.